Hello, and thank you all for watching this recorded class. We are going to be talking about nutrition during perimenopause and menopause. Hey, now my name is Camille Woodward. I am a master's student at Utah State University studying public health and nutrition. I have my bachelor's of science in dietetics, and I'm working to become a registered dietitian. And this class that I've created is one of my major projects for my master's degree. So, USU Extension is currently working on putting together programs and resources to help you feel at your best in perimenopause and menopause. They have very kindly allowed me to create this class and the resources for you, all as part of the effort to help you during this time of life. They have a midlife health social media page. The QR code to that page is on your handout and will be shown at the end of the presentation. And this is a great place to go to stay updated on future resources. So, today we'll be talking, like I said, about nutrition and menopause, and I'm very excited to give you some helpful tools as you go throughout this phase in your life. There's a handout that goes with this recorded class that will be made available for you to use and to reference. You can either print it out and write on it or just use it for reference, whatever works best for you. Hey, let's go over what we're going to talk about today first. So, we're going to talk about the changes that happen during menopause in your body. We're going to talk about why nutrition matters. We'll talk about nutrition priorities for perimenopause and menopause. And we'll spend the bulk of this presentation talking about protein. We'll talk about what protein is, your individualized protein needs. We'll do a calculation activity where you'll actually be able to figure out how much protein you need. We'll talk about which foods are good sources of protein, how to meet your needs, some common questions that come with protein, and then towards the end we'll do an overview of the handout that I provided, and then we'll do some goal setting. So, before we get into the content that I've prepared, I do want to let you know that nutrition is one of the many important parts to improving your health, but it is not a fix for everything that this stage of life throws at you. Meeting your protein needs, unfortunately, will not stop your hot flashes, but what you will walk away from this presentation with is the ability to explain why nutrition is important during the menopausal transition. You'll be able to calculate your individualized protein needs and identify ways to meet your needs. And you'll be able to identify and implement improvements that you can make nutritionally to support your health. Okay, and I want you to start off by thinking about these two questions. First of all, what motivated you to watch this class? And second, what is one thing that you hope to learn? And I want you to think about how your answers to these questions could potentially be made into goals. We'll have time towards the end of the recording where you can write down a nutrition goal that you have, and an answer to this question could really align well with that. Hey, let's talk about the changes that happen in your body during menopause. So, change number one is there can be a loss in muscle mass. So, muscle mass decreases at around the same stage of life that menopause occurs. So, what lean mass is the non-fat components of the body. So, this includes like skin, bones, organs, muscle, and water. And so, I want to draw your attention to this graph that kind of shows this first point. So, the top part of the graph shows hormonal changes that happen during perimenopause and menopause. You'll notice premenopause. The two lines I want you to focus on are the light blue and the pink lines. That's progesterone and estrogen. And you'll notice that premenopause, they're both relatively high. Then during the perimenopause phase, they kind of decrease up till the point of menopause, which is that dark line. And then they remain low after that. Now, at the same time that this is happening, I want you to look at the bottom part of the graph. So that black line is still when menopause occurs. So that's when there hasn't been a menstrual period for 12 months. And I want you to just focus on this dotted blue line. So this dotted blue line is relative lean mass. So like I kind of explained before, those are going to be the non-fat components of the body compared to the fat components of the body. So it's kind of like a ratio between the lean mass, your skin, bones, organs, muscles, and water compared to storage fat. So you'll notice that at the same time, that relative lean mass kind of decreases as well. So that's something that we want to prevent. And the exact cause of muscle mass loss has not been proven. It could be due to less activity, could be due to behavior changes, hormonal changes, but the important thing is that the risk of this can be managed through lifestyle changes. Another change that can happen is a decrease in bone mineral density. So, what bone mineral density is it's the amount of minerals in the bone. And they are specifically talking about minerals like phosphorus and calcium. Calcium is going to be really important for this. And so, because there's an estrogen decrease, like we saw in that a couple slides ago, there can be a loss in bone mineral density. And that increases risk for fractures and for frailty later in life. There's an average 2% loss per year, beginning before menopause and then lasting for 10 years after. So it's something that we do want to focus on preventing. And then we also have the symptoms. We got hot flashes, we have sleep changes, emotional changes, changes in weight, fatigue, brain fog, hair loss, just to name a few. And these changes can be really, really frustrating to say the least. And again, while nutrition alone can't fix these things, it can be a very helpful tool and something that you can work on to help with these things. Let's talk about a little bit about why nutrition matters during this time. So, just like in infancy, in childhood, and in adolescence, there's different nutrition needs, and midlife is no different. Menopause is no different. Because of the decrease in estrogen and with aging, your energy needs can be slightly lower, but your body still needs several important nutrients to support healthy aging. So, focusing on these three areas can help to protect your health. So, in order to prevent muscle mass loss, we can make sure that we are meeting our protein needs and exercising. And number two, in order to protect bone health, we can make sure that we're getting enough calcium and vitamin D in our diets. And this one is outlined a little bit more on your handout. And then number three, symptoms, again, can have a huge impact on your well being. Nutrition evidence right now is really limited on specific supplements or nutrients for symptom management. But what research does support is a general healthy diet because this can reduce the risk of chronic diseases and contributes to overall health and well being. And it may help with symptoms. Now, the goal is to focus on nutrition choices that will support you during this stage of life and beyond. Okay, about a month ago, we sent out a nutrition interest poll to kind of help me determine what you guys wanted to learn about, what you wanted to hear about, and overwhelmingly, protein was a topic that you guys were the most interested in hearing about. And so that's what we'll spend most of the class on. And what I hope is that by the end of this presentation, you'll feel more comfortable and more confident in meeting your protein needs. So let's first talk about what protein is. So, protein is necessary for your body to have in order to build muscle and tissue. And that also includes things like hair and nails, too. It also helps in making hormones, it helps make enzymes to help you digest food, it carries nutrients around your body, it keeps your body fluids in balance, and it has a role when your body fights infection. And lastly, it also gives you energy. Now, what we'll focus on most today is its role in building muscle to kind of go along with our muscle mass priority. And our goal is to consume the amount of protein that our bodies need so that the body has the building blocks that it needs to maintain muscle mass. Now, another thing that you may have heard of is protein balance. Your body naturally builds up and breaks down muscle and tissue all the time. Now, you want this balance to be even or to have more muscle buildup than muscle breakdown. So that's balanced, right? And resistance and strength training specifically can help during this life stage and goes hand in hand with protein intake to do this. So, yeah, your body needs the resources, which is the protein to build muscle, and it also needs the demand. Your body needs to know to build muscle, so that together protein and exercise make it so buildup of muscle is happening more than breakdown. Now, a frequent question is what kinds of exercises are recommended to maintain muscles, to build muscle? And that is resistance exercise. And resistance exercise can also be called strength training as well, and that is exercise that requires muscles to contract. And so some examples of this would be like lifting weights, working with resistance bands, or lifting your own body weight. So it can include like pushing, lifting, squats, push-ups. There's a lot of different activities and exercises that can be classified as a resistance exercise, but the most important thing is that it's making your muscles contract, it's making those muscles work so that they can grow. And there will be future resources from USU Extension for exercise during perimenopause and menopause, so I'd encourage you to keep an eye out for those. Okay, let's talk about how much protein your body needs next. We'll talk about two methods for finding out how much protein you need and also meeting those needs. You're welcome to choose the method that works the best for you. Number one, we'll go over the plate method. Now, the plate method is more simple, a little bit easier to use, especially in daily life. But if math and numbers is really your thing, then the grams method is also really great too. So, and you can even do a mixture of both, just whatever works best for you. So we'll go ahead and talk about the plate method first. Okay, again, this is the much simpler method. So what we'll do for this is we'll kind of focus on this visual graphic here. And so for meals and snacks, you'll want to aim for about these proportions of the different food groups. So you want about half your plate to be fruits and vegetables, a quarter of your plate to be grains, and the other quarter to be protein. And so with this method, protein-wise, you will fill a quarter of your plate at each meal with a good protein source. We'll talk about sources after we go over the grams method. And the idea is that if you do this at each meal, if you include about a fourth of your plate protein, and if you include it in snacks, just a source of protein in snacks, then you'll likely get the amount of protein that you need per day without a lot of math needed. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about the grams method now. So this one is a lot more specific because it talks about the specific number of grams of protein that your body needs. So what we'll do in this method is we will see how many grams of protein that you need in one day. And this is calculated by multiplying the recommendation for protein by body weight in kilograms. So the general minimum recommendation for everyone is, not everyone, is 0.8 grams of protein per 1 kilogram of body weight per day. So this is for those who maybe aren't able to be as active and is meant to support the body's base needs. Now, more specific to those in the menopausal transition, along with resistance exercise, is a range of 1.0 to 1.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. Now, you may wonder, what if I'm doing hormone replacement therapy? Will that impact how many grams of protein that I'll need? This is a great question. Your protein needs will still be the same. Studies have shown that hormone replacement therapy doesn't appear to influence protein synthesis or the rate at which your body is building up muscle. One very important thing to keep in mind before we start calculating specific needs is these recommendations, the 0.8 and the 1.0 to 1.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, are for a general audience and aren't going to necessarily be accurate for everyone. Now, this is especially true if you have other health conditions like kidney disease, cancer, or wounds, to name just a few. So I'd encourage you to work with a dietitian or healthcare provider if you have any concerns about this. Okay, let's get into calculating your individualized protein needs. So first, I'll go over the instructions of how we do this. Then I'll go through an example, and then I'll let you pause the video so that you can calculate your protein needs specifically. Okay, we have 4 main steps as we go through this. So first, what you'll do is you'll take your weight in pounds. So this can be your usual body weight, it can be your most recent weight, and you'll divide that by 2.2 in order to get your weight in kilograms. So I encourage you to write that down after you have it when we do the activity. And then next, you'll multiply the number of kilograms of body weight by the recommendation that best aligns with your needs, with your lifestyle. If you're not sure, sometimes it can be helpful to calculate the minimum requirement and then the recommendation range so that you can change your goals for protein intake as your activity levels change. So you'll write down the amounts if you've calculated multiple, or write down the amount that you feel best fits with your lifestyle. And those are your total daily needs. You'll then take that number and then you'll divide it by the number of meals and snacks that you usually have. And this will give you a number of grams of protein to aim for at each meal and snack. Now, snacks will probably be a little bit less protein than you'll have at meals, and that can be adjusted for. So typically what I like to do is I like to count meals as like one. So if you have let's say 3 meals and 2 snacks. That's not a good example. Let's say you had 3 meals and 1 snack per day. I like to count snacks as 0.5. So keep that in mind. We'll go over this in the example next. Okay, let's talk about June. So June is 170 pounds. She is 49 years old, does resistance training a couple days per week, has 3 meals per day, and 1 snack. And so step number 1 is we're going to find the weight in kilograms. So we'll take 170 pounds, we'll divide that by 2.2, and we're going to find that that is 77.27 kilograms. Now, I don't like to round quite yet. We'll round when we get to the number of grams of protein, but for kilograms, we'll keep it at the 77.27. So next, we're going to multiply that by the minimum amount needed, which is 0.8 grams per kilogram. So we'll do 77.27 kilograms times 0.8 grams of protein, and that is going to give us 62 grams of protein is the minimum amount that June should get per day. And now, let's go ahead, we'll multiply it by the recommendation for menopause with resistance exercise. So that lower range is going to be the 1.0 grams per kilogram. So 77.27 times 1, we're going to round that to 77 grams of protein is the lower range of the menopause and exercise. And then we're going to multiply 77.27 kilograms by 1.2 grams. And that is going to give us 93 grams of protein for that upper range. And so Julia does resistance training a couple days per week. So let's go ahead and put her kind of in the middle of the menopause and resistance exercise range. So we'll find the middle of 77 and 93, which is about 85. There's a couple ways you can do this. You can multiply 77.27 times 1.1 to find that middle range, or you can add 77 plus 93 and then divide it by 2 to find the average of those two. So the 85 is kind of what we've determined her daily needs are. So what we'll do then is we'll divide 85 by 3.5 because she has 3 meals per day. So 3 and then 1 snack I like to count as a 0.5. And so when you divide that, it ends up being 24. And so we'll do 24 per meal, and then we'll do half of that, which is 12 grams of protein per snack. And you can always go back and double check your work on this. You do, let's see, if I get 24 grams of protein in each of my 3 meals, and if I get 12 grams in 1 snack, you can check to make sure that that adds up to 85. Okay, awesome. Okay, I'll go ahead and let you guys use your handout so you can calculate your protein needs. Best of luck. You got this. Okay, awesome. Now that you've calculated your protein needs in grams, we'll go ahead and go over protein sources. So how you're actually going to get how much we calculated. And we'll continue talking about the plate method and the crumbs method here. So here's a list of some common foods with protein. We have complete protein and also incomplete protein. Now, let me tell you about the difference between complete and incomplete proteins. So, we're talking about how protein is the building blocks of our muscles and tissues, and the building blocks of protein are amino acids. So, amino acids make up protein, and protein makes up our body. So, there are 20 amino acids total. There's only 9 that our bodies cannot make. And so, complete proteins have all of the 9 essential amino acids in that food in the ratios that your body really likes. And incomplete proteins are missing at least one amino acid that your body does need. The good news is that these 3 types of incomplete proteins are missing different amino acids. So you can simply pair them together throughout the day. So, yeah, that's legumes, whole grains, and nuts and seeds. So, for example, if you have some whole grain toast for breakfast and a handful of nuts as a snack, then together they make up a complete protein and count for that protein. Does that make sense? And so, yeah, here I have a list of some complete proteins and some incomplete proteins that you can include. Also included in your handout is a longer list of protein sources, along with a QR code that leads to an even larger list of protein foods. Plant protein sources are really, really good for you. They typically have a lot of fiber that helps with your heart health and your gut health, and they also contain vitamins and minerals that your body really needs. So I would encourage you to include plant-based protein as well. So let's apply this to each of the methods, starting with the plate method. So again, we'll include a fourth of the plate, or we'll include a fourth of the plate as protein at each meal and include with snacks. So what we want to do is we want to have a variety of these sources at meals and snacks. And I want to note that if you're not a big meat eater, but you still eat animal products, cottage cheese and yogurt are really great options that pack a punch with protein. And again, plant protein sources are really great for you, and they're also going to be your cheaper protein options. I've included, again, that list of protein sources on your handout, so you can have that for a quick reference. Okay, and let's go over kind of the grams method, how to apply it to there. So you can find out or kind of estimate how many grams of protein are in common foods. And I have this chart here with a couple examples. I want you to be aware, though, that not all foods in a given category have the same amount of protein. So milk and yogurt specifically can have really different protein content when you're looking at different brands or different types, or if you're having like a plant-based milk or yogurt. And so if you aren't sure about how many grams of protein is in a food, it's helpful to check its nutrition label. So we'll want to look at a couple things. We'll want to look at the number of grams of protein in one serving. So in this case, it looks like there's 3 grams of protein per serving in this specific food. Then we'll also want to look at the serving size. And so if you eat more than the serving size or less than the serving size, then you can kind of do a little bit of math to find out how much protein you're eating in that food. And on the bottom of that list that we have on your handout, there's a QR code that links to a website that tells exactly how many grams of protein are in some common protein foods. And I do want to draw your attention to a couple that I have on this table. So typically for a 3-ounce portion of meat, that can include um, like beef, poultry, fish. About 3 ounces is going to be about 20 grams of protein. Um, yeah, and you can just go ahead and look at that list. Lentils also have a lot of protein. So 1 cup, I believe cooked, has 18 grams of protein. So yeah, I'd encourage you to look at that handout to kind of delve more into this. Okay, and I want to encourage you, so on your handout, if you have it printed out, if you want to open your notes app on your phone, I'd encourage you to write down your favorite sources of protein and maybe some that you haven't tried or that you don't include very often that you're interested in, that you would like to consume. And also think about ways that you can incorporate them in meals, kind of following this plate method. Okay, and another thing that I want to draw your attention to, so you'll notice protein we have in that bottom corner. Not all of these categories fit very neatly into these different sections of the plate. So, like I mentioned before, whole grains are a source of protein. Also, dairy products are a source of protein. So, it's not necessarily a perfect system. There's also beans that are a good source of protein, but this is okay. Um, this method can still make it easier to help you balance your plate, even if they don't fit perfectly in one another. Okay, and I have some tips for you for protein intake. So, number one is to pair your protein with whole grains, fruits, and vegetables, and to spread your intake throughout the day. It can be really difficult if you're trying to get, like we calculated for um, June, we calculated 85 grams of protein. It can be really challenging to get all of that in one meal. So I'd encourage you to spread it throughout the day. It's going to be quite a bit easier to get protein when you're including it at each meal and snack. I'd also encourage, if you eat mostly animal proteins, include some plant proteins too. We mentioned that they have a lot of health benefits, and they can be a lot cheaper, which is so helpful. And I want you to consider where you are now with your protein intake and maybe how you can improve. Maybe that's increasing the variety of sources. Maybe that's including a source at each meal and snack. And I also want you to remember that protein is a part of the whole picture, which is a balanced diet. Okay, let's go over some common questions that people may have about protein. Number one, what happens if you don't get enough? So, severe deficiency is going to be really, really rare in the United States. This happens with starvation and famine conditions. What we can see more often here is a less severe protein deficiency. So, some symptoms of that could be like hair and nail changes, a loss of lean body mass, loss in strength and mobility. Risk factors for this is like low protein intake, a sedentary lifestyle, and also hormonal changes can be a risk factor. This is treated and prevented with adequate protein intake and regular physical activity, like we mentioned before. Now, something that I want to go over specifically is that most Americans do consume enough protein, but lack variety. So there's a national survey that goes out called NHANES, and that is meant to kind of assess the dietary behaviors of average Americans. And so you'll notice here in this blue, the blue is the recommendation for each category, and the purple dot is kind of where we're at for meeting that. So you'll notice that total protein foods in a day, we're right meeting that, which is super great. You'll notice for meats, poultry, and eggs, the consumption's like sometimes quite a bit higher than the recommendation necessarily. So we're pretty high on those in general for a diet in the United States. For seafood, you'll notice that what we're getting is a little bit under the recommendation, and then nuts, seeds, and soy products is kind of right on. So I want you to consider how much you typically consume. You can do that through thinking about what you typically eat in a day and finding out how much protein is in that. yeah, you can compare that to the needs that we calculated to kind of assess if you are getting enough. Okay, another common question that comes up with this is, can I have too much protein? Is there such thing as too much? So your body doesn't really have a good way to store protein. So muscles are a storage form of protein, but they do take a lot of energy for your body to maintain. So your body will convert extra protein to glucose or to fat because your body can store those. And so exceeding what you need as far as protein intake has no added benefit compared to just meeting your needs. Now, in some cases, excessive protein intake can be harmful. So, this is especially true if it displaces nutrients. If you're getting so much protein that you're not getting fruits and vegetables or carbohydrates, if you're not getting grains or healthy fats, then that can be a cause for concern. It's also a cause for concern in cases of kidney disease. And you may need less protein if you do have kidney disease or other medical conditions. So, again, I'd encourage you to follow the recommendations of your physician and dietitian when determining if there's a risk for getting too much protein. Okay, another common question is, what about protein supplements? Now, protein supplements have some pros and cons. One of the pros is that they're really simple and they're a convenient way to get protein. Now, I especially hear a lot of positive comments when people say, I really don't like breakfast. I don't feel like eating a big meal at the beginning of the day. What I do like, what some people like, is having a protein drink that they can drink in the morning. And so that can be a really good way to meet their protein needs. Some cons with it is that protein supplements can be expensive and they don't always include the other nutrients that are found in whole foods. And so if you have questions or concerns with protein supplements or just supplements in general, I'd encourage you to speak with a dietitian or a healthcare provider. They'll be able to kind of individualize the recommendations for you based on your health history and conditions. Okay, so there's some topics that we unfortunately don't have time to talk all about today, but they're topics that are still really important. So I want to draw your attention to this handout that we have here. So I have a section that includes some meal ideas that include protein. And then on this front page, nutrition priorities during perimenopause and menopause is the one that I especially want you to focus on. So I have a section about symptoms, section about just tips for getting a balanced diet, and then a section about bone health. So that includes recommendations for calcium and vitamin D, along with the sources that you would get that from. And then I have a section about where to go for additional information. And so I have a QR code that links to finding a registered dietitian near you. I have one that helps you find a menopause certified practitioner, and then one for like the USU Extension Midlife Health social media page. And those can all be very helpful as you continue your health journey and as you want to know more information.
Yeah.
Okay, and lastly, we have a section for a nutrition goal. So I want you to write down one nutrition change that you can make that will support your health as you go throughout this stage in your life. And this can be about protein, it can be about bone health, it can be about getting a balanced diet, or really anything between that or beyond that that you think will best help support your health. And so you're more than welcome to pause the video if you have it printed out to write it down, or just think about a goal that you want to make. Okay, thank you guys so much for listening to this class and for your support. I have a couple more QR codes here, so I'm always looking for ways to improve as an educator and as a presenter. So I'd love it if you could take this 1-minute survey. It will help me so much as I continue in my education. So that's the QR code to the left, and to the right, we have the link to the USU Extension, Midlife Health, and Menopause Instagram. And this, again, is a great place to get more information and to keep updated on future resources and events, along with the USU Extension web pages. Okay, thank you guys so much for watching. I have my sources and references here, and I will go ahead and make sure that these slides are shareable as well as the handout so you can reference them in the future. Okay, thanks so much.